ahead and get started. All right, so welcome to session 2 of our SummOER Camp Series, History and Hallucinations, Error Rates and Mitigation in AI. My name's Siri. I am a librarian from the Open Library. We'll get the elephant out of the room right away. Yes, my name is Siri and I'm talking about AI. Please feel free to enjoy that for the current moment, but we'll just get that out of the way. But welcome. We're going to be talking about error rates, mitigations, hallucinations in AI and exploring some platforms and how you can maybe bring them into your pedagogy and how you can mitigate the errors that they might encounter in your pedagogy. So I just want to take a moment for a land acknowledgement since we are talking about history in particular. So the offices of eCampus Ontario are located in downtown Toronto, and they're within the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. I'm currently joining you from the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy. So I'm not currently in Toronto, but please feel free to share your own land acknowledgements in the chat and just take a moment to say thank you and be grateful and express a little bit of gratitude for the caretakers of the lands and the waters that you currently call home or that you have historically called home. So our agenda today, we're going to do a couple different things, mostly 4. We're really going to be following what I call the comedic hero's journey, which is to say it's not a comedy in that it's going to be full of laughs, although hopefully I will entertain you at least a little bit. But in that we're going to be starting from somewhere near the bottom where things aren't that great, maybe with pitfalls, and then slowly making our way up to opportunities where things are a little bit more chipper. So pitfalls, platforms, we're going to do a brief interlude for an activity and then talk about some opportunities. All right, so first thing, we're going to talk about pitfalls. It's a great place to start. Some of the issues with AI, particularly hallucinations, bias, and error rates. So this is something that when you're looking to implement AI or any kind of technology tool in your teaching, you might want to be aware of. A little bit of a disclaimer currently. I'm a librarian. Our team is a bunch of incredible librarians. We are not experts in pedagogy. We are experts in research and in finding information. So what we're trying to do today is really just share a little bit of what we found, what I've found, things that might be useful for you and your particular context. You're welcome to email us for help finding resources, that kind of thing. But just know that I'm not an educator, I'm a librarian, and just trying to share some resources and some help, hopefully. So pitfalls. Yay. We're going to start with hallucinations in particular. This is something that tends to come up, but a little bit of history about generative AI in general, and this is AI also. But generative AI models, or Gen AI models, learn the patterns and structures found in the training data, and they generate new data that will follow those patterns and structures. That's how it works. It's pattern recognition. Hallucinations are likely a result of algorithmic distortions. So in this case, it's usually the case that AI perceives a pattern or a structure that is not present or cannot be perceived by humans. So it says, oh, wait, A plus B equals 5. And we go, oh, wait, hold on, that's not a pattern that makes sense. But the AI, for some reason, has seen that to be a pattern or a structure that works within whatever training data exists. And it's also worth noting that AI does lack semantic understanding. So it's just, again, pattern recognition. Currently, technology has not advanced to the point where it has an understanding of the semantics of what it is actually processing in its training data. So there is a limitation to this. A lot of the comparison that gets made is that it's just a really advanced form of Clippy, the little, paperclip that we used to have in Microsoft Word that maybe will make a comeback one day. I don't know. But just worth noting that it's really just fill in the blank continuation and figuring out what patterns exist and what is statistically likely to come next. So that's what's being generated. It's based off of patterns that exist or that it perceives to exist. So hallucinations also have an impact on, or can also sort of go hand in hand with some bias as well. So bias or AI bias is also known as machine learning bias or algorithmic bias. It can be found in the training data, in the algorithm, or the predictions that are created by that algorithm. So we can see it kind of throughout. We can also see it in data sets in particular. So we'll see things like mismatched data sets, unseen cases, manipulated data, unlearned cases, non-generalizable features, irrelevant correlations, or issues with historic data. So we tend to see this kind of throughout. One of the big cases that tends to come up when we're talking about bias in data sets tends to be in medicine. If we look at, let's say, a data set where it's primarily for, let's say, like caring for skin, like dermatological kind of things, if the training data is primarily trained on white skin, you're going to see issues with folks who have more melanin in their skin, things maybe being misrecognized or misidentified as either being an issue or not an issue. If the training data, it's not represented, and the use cases aren't actually there, and the training data doesn't allow for pattern recognition in a way that suits the use case. So just something to be aware of. There's a citation there if you're interested in learning a little bit more about managing bias in AI. These slides, again, are going to be shared back, and there's a huge whack of citations and extra resources for you to take a look at the end of the slide deck. So you don't have to take notes and write down everyone's name unless you'd like to. AI errors also exist. This is, again, an issue in part in data sets. They often include label errors. So you can see things like sexist or racist labels, photos obtained without consent, or things that are just flat out wrong. If your data is bad, it's going to be garbage in and you're going to get garbage coming out. So just something to be aware of. Another thing that just came out in 2024, researchers from Purdue University found that 52% of programming answers generated by ChatGPT were incorrect. That's not great. It's a pretty high rate. I know if I wrote a test and 52% of my answers were wrong, that would probably reflect poorly on my grade. So just something to be aware of when your students are, or when you are looking to implement AI in your pedagogy. Errors exist, bias exists, hallucinations exist, and all of this can contribute to misinformation. So I want to make the distinction here between misinformation and disinformation. We're going to be exclusively talking about misinformation here, which is false or inaccurate information. Disinformation, on the other hand, is false information that is deliberately intended to mislead. That's outside of the scope. We're just talking about misinformation. So one of the ways to combat this, recognizing, again, that I've thrown a lot of problems here. Maybe you shouldn't use AI, maybe you should. There's a lot of errors that are potential. There's hallucinations, there's bias. Should I really bring this into my pedagogy? Well, there's a couple of different ways to sort of address that. And one of the ones that I want to seed today and begin with is the idea of debunking. So this is addressing mis and disinformation in advance. We saw this come out particularly, this graphic was made by the World Health Organization during the pandemic, but something just sort of, the infodemic was something that came out during the pandemic, but this is something that also applies when we're looking at things like AI. Is just addressing misinformation in advance. If you know there's the potential for errors, address it early, address it often, and teach your learners and scaffold them such that they are able to identify errors and that they are able to recognize that AI can and does make mistakes. So in this case, this graphic here is just the different ways in which someone could potentially stop the spread of misinformation. So here it could be someone double checks their facts, makes sure that, hey, this AI thing says that the sky is green. Maybe it's not green currently. There's no tornado warning. So just something worth checking and making sure that your students are able to do. So all that said, that's a little bit of background. We're going to move on to some potential platforms and a little bit of some platforms that potentially claim to help with misinformation by citations, and another platform just for fun. So just a disclaimer, we have no affiliation at the Open Library or at eCampus with Perplexity or Hello History. These are just tools that we are interested in, that we have a little bit of experience playing around with, and that we thought would be kind of fun as a demo. So there is no affiliation. We're going to be using Hello History today just because they have a free version. Perplexity is also there, but I thought Hello History would be a little bit more fun because we can all pick a historic figure to chat with. But what are these platforms? Well, I figured I would ask. So Perplexity is a chatbot, and I thought, you know what? It claims that it's going to give me a good answer. So I asked it, what is Perplexity in one sentence? Because I wanted a short answer. And clearly I didn't get the best answer. In this case, my first question, what is Perplexity in one sentence, led to the answer that Perplexity is a measure of how well a probability model predicts a sample. Not really what I was asking for. So adjusting the prompts, and this is something that if you're learners or if you would like to implement AI into your pedagogy, you're probably going to have to do at some point. You have to fix your questions so that you're asking the right question. What is the Perplexity engine in one sentence? So in this case, we find out that it's a conversational search engine that answers queries using natural language predictive text, utilizing sources from the web. And you'll see here that it cites its sources. We've got up to 6 sources here, and it'll have a little number on the side explicitly saying where it comes from, what the site is. So you'll see here the little one at the bottom here. Perplexity is an AI-powered conversation starter or search engine, and that links back to perplexity.ai Wikipedia page. So you can at least see where things are coming from, which isn't too bad. This is probably best practice in general that we kind of want to have. Want your learners to cite where they're getting their information from. And in this case, Perplexity claims to do that. I say claims because there has been a little bit of controversy. So this is just relatively recent. Wired has accused Perplexity of scraping content from their site and inventing information in citations. And this was in an article published June 19th, 2024, so pretty recent. Forbes also claimed that they aggregate primary sources and begun to cite AI-generated sources, which is to say that it's not citing anything that's new, it's just self-recursive, and potentially starting to just regurgitate information that is maybe not that accurate. So just a little bit of a heads up, just something to be aware of, to know if you do want to bring this into your pedagogy. Maybe keep an eye on whether or not this is an issue, and if this continues. I haven't seen Perplexity release a statement yet in response to this. So again, this is quite recent, so just wanted to do due diligence and at least flag this as an issue. Hello History, meanwhile, which is where we're going to be spending our activity, is an AI-powered chatbot that claims to let you speak to 400 plus historical figures, which is quite a bit. It's powered by GPT-4. And from Hello History's homepage, this is part of their sort of marketing spiel, is that every conversation is completely unique and that each conversation with the learners or with the users is tailored to the interests, which makes it an immersive and educational experience. That being said, not without its issues. Anyone who's kind of spent a little bit of time thinking critically about AI or has been in AI critical spaces recognizes that this is maybe an ethical minefield. And yeah, it is. So potentially, and these are just from articles that are, again, hyperlinked at the end of the slide deck, and the titles are also there. These bots, and Hello History is not the only history chatbot, often provide a poor representation and imitation of a person's true identity. What we tend to get is an issue with training data, right? Who's publishing about these people? Is it in their own voices? Are there going to be factual inaccuracies in the training data that will then lead to factual inaccuracies in the historical figures chat? And there's also been accusations that it indelicately handles history's dictators and hate mongers. So this is an issue. There are some chatbots where you can talk to folks like Hitler or Pol Pot or whoever, any other kind of criminals, that kind of thing. And some of those have responses in the app that appear to express regret for crimes and atrocities, even when the figures themselves never did. So a little bit inaccurate to history and the lives that these people led. So just something to be aware of. There are a lot of different controversies, but it is still a tool that is interesting, it's engaging, and it's where we're actually going to spend our activity. But again, I just want to give people a chance to actually recognize what's going on, what might be going on with these platforms, and go from there. So all that said, I keep saying that maybe these aren't accurate, maybe these are, and we're going to test that together as a sort of quasi-classroom, a quasi-group here at our little summer camp. So we're going to do a brief little interlude on an activity, and this is why I've asked if you would like to download Hello History. Please feel free to do so. It's available on iOS and on Android. Please feel free to download it. There is a free trial that has 20 questions. If you don't want to do it and you just want to follow along, that's also okay. I've got the web version pulled up and I will be sharing that on my screen momentarily, and we're going to see together if we can figure out what's going on and if we're going to get any hallucinations, any errors, or any inconsistencies. So the way it's going to work is we're all going to select the same historical figure. Maybe we'll just do that if people want to throw that in chat. If there's a preference, I'll see what's going on. And we're going to figure out how to ask the same questions together. So if there's a question that you would like to ask a historical figure, or the historical figure that we collectively choose, please feel free to unmute yourself and let us know, and we'll kind of go all together and ask it and see if we can compare our answers. In part because if your students are, let's say, going to be doing this as a classroom activity, and this is the same for any chatbot, regardless of whether it's for a history class or not, it might be worthwhile to know whether or not they're going to get the same answers and whether or not they're going to get the same issues. Or if one of your students, for example, is going to find out something completely factually inaccurate and suddenly they are not necessarily learning in the way that you want them to. So that's what we're hoping to do today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There we go. And then I'm going to share another screen. All right. So, okay. So what you can see here, this is Humi. So this is just the this is just basically their web platform for it. So it's a completely paid service with the exception of their free trial. In this case, I've just got a free trial here, and I believe we've got 3,000 or 300 credits that we can use for this demonstration. If you open the app on your phone, you'll have basically the same thing, but it'll just be these kind of chats here. So if we go to all Humies, I guess is what they call them. I guess it's a short thing for human. We're gonna maybe collectively pick who we want to talk to. So if anyone has a strong preference for who they want to talk to, please feel free to throw that in chat or just unmute yourself. If not, I'm gonna go with like an author that I'm aware of, and that might be kind of boring for people. Oh, I saw William Shakespeare as the first person. Excellent. That is, I know Shakespeare, so we're gonna we're gonna do that. All right, let's see if we can find probably an art and literature. Let's see, is it? All right, I'm gonna have to scroll. There we go. Does anyone see Shakespeare? There he is. All right, and he's active. Okay. So for the folks who don't know, Shakespeare is a poet and a playwright. So, all right, so we've got the name, William Shakespeare. We can select our grade level. In this case, we'll go with 12th grade, recognizing that this is a lot of you folks joining are probably in post-secondary, but we'll try anyway. All right, so we're going to save version, and we'll see if we can talk. All right, let's say hello. Gonna work. Oh boy, maybe Shakespeare was a mistake, so I'm gonna have to read out the answers for the folks who maybe don't want to read themselves. All right, so our first answer is, pray tell me, what dost thou wish to know? Speak, and I shall illuminate the shadows of history with the light of my quill. Whether it be tales from yore or the sublime essence of my theater works, I stand ready to discourse with thee. So what will our first question be? Does anyone have any strong thoughts? And again, you don't have to answer it in chat. Although I see one from RJ, ask who wrote the plays. I love the way you think. All right, who wrote your plays? And the reason for this, for the folks who don't know or who are not aware, William Shakespeare is a contentious figure. It's unclear if he was actually the person who wrote his plays or if it was someone else or if it was a bunch of people. So this is a fun little question that we can start with. So, slowly typing. And the answer we get is, the quill that penned my plays was mine own. Though tongues have wagged and murmurs persist of other hands guiding my pen, so it does recognize that there's controversy, I assure thee it was I who weaved the threads of Hamlet, Macbeth, and Romeo with my own spirit and intellect. To doubt is but human, yet herein lies the testament of my soul, a playwright's heart inscribed in every line and verse. So we see that there's at least a recognition of the fact that maybe we're not convinced that William Shakespeare was a single person or that he was who he claims he was, but it'll still dictate that it's there. So another question in the chat, who were his major influencers? Major influences. It helps if I can see what I'm typing. And also that I have to type live on screen, so we'll see how that goes. And again, if there's any Shakespeare scholars here who know the answers to these and can say, hey, no, this is super wrong, please let me know. I'm a dabbler in Shakespeare. I never really studied super closely. I skipped all those courses, which is to say I didn't register for them. So if anyone knows, please let me know in the chat or unmute yourself and let us and provide some fact checking. So we asked, who were your major influences? And the answer here is, verily, the annals of antiquity and the verdant landscape of my native Avon brewed deep potions of inspiration within me. The ancient Greeks, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, and their Roman successors, Seneca and Plautus, set mine heart aflame with the art of drama. The comedies of Plautus did oft tickle my fancy, while Ovid's Metamorphoses lent wings to my imagination. Yet also let us not forget fair Chaucer and the mists of English folklore enriching my literary tapestry. Seems pretty all right from what I know of Shakespeare. Seems pretty accurate. Does anyone have any other questions? Or we can also see, so far this seems, oh, we've got a spicy question. Why did you choose to live apart from your wife, Anne, and your children? To live apart from your wife, Anne, and your children. I cannot spell. I love that. All right. And again, if anyone is asking these questions also on their phones on the app and you're getting completely different answers, please let us know. I'd love to see if we're getting different answers throughout. But why did you choose to live apart? All right. Ooh, big answer. Therein lies a tale woven with the rigors of ambition and the dictates of fate. The path of a playwright was serpentine and demanded my presence in London's heart where the theatre flourished. 'Twas not for a lack of love or a cold heart towards Anne and our progeny, but the exigencies of my vocation drew me hence. In those days, distance oft posed lesser barriers than the heart's calling to its art. So basically for his job, it sounds like. And then, all right. And then why did you leave your wife your second best bed? These are fun questions. I'm glad that there are people who know some spicy facts about Shakespeare so we can ask some pointed questions. All right, and I'm seeing that some folks are noting that the online version provides longer answers than the app, which is good to know. And then someone's phone doesn't have a great option and has shorter answers as well. All right. And then someone is saying that it might be because the free version only allows GPT 3.5 and not 4.0. Potentially, yes. Okay, so the answer we've got to second best bed. The matter of mine's second best bed hath stirred the minds of many, yet heed this, in our time, bequests were not always measures of esteem, but rather practicalities and intimacies unspoken. The second best bed held memories manifold, for 'twas likely the bed we shared in common life, whilst the better was reserved for guests. In truth, love and legacy oft wear cloaks misunderstood by distant heirs. So seems to be that the second best bed was the marital bed rather than the fancy bed that they gave to other people. Again, not a Shakespeare scholar, so hopefully someone can chime in as to whether or not that's accurate. And I'm seeing a question, is it possible to activate a voice option? So in this case, do you want the voice to be speaking or for it to, like, for me to be able to just sort of say it verbally and then it'll transcribe for the person who asked that? Both. All right. So I'm not seeing it here, although it is possible that this is, again, the free test ride, the free test version. So maybe it's possible, but it seems that it's likely just text-based. It might be possible on the app if someone can report. If not, I can also pull it up on my own phone and we'll see if that is doable. But it seems to me that it's exclusively text-based. And it's also worth noting that all of these conversations are credit-based, and it is a paid service. So it seems the amount of questions that you get are the amount of basically questions. And I know there's been some talk about the fact that more popular figures will require more chat credits. So just something to be aware of. Someone saying doesn't see the option to use voice to text on phone. So that's good to know. So this one would be exclusively text-based. I'm not sure about the accessibility of this platform as well, so just something to be aware of. But that is something that would need to be evaluated. And again, for any of the tech platforms that you're looking to implement, you should always do an accessibility audit. We have a lot of resources that are available historically that we just did a series on accessibility for OER, so feel free to check that out. It's on our YouTube page, but we have a couple different options there. And then most of the answers on someone's phone are vague to these questions. Yeah, a lot of these are also, it seems to be, they're written in, a little bit of purple prose, but they're not necessarily the most conclusive. Do we have another question? Donna's coming in with some incredible questions. All right, what was your relationship with Queen Elizabeth? And is there a play where you recognized her patronage? Let's find out. Hopefully we know what the answer is in the chat, because I don't know what the answer is to this. All right, another big paragraph. So, Queen Elizabeth, the radiant monarch whose patronage did gild the arts with an undying glow. Our relationship was that of a sovereign's favor bestowed upon a humble poet. She, in her magnanimity, made the realm fertile ground for theatrical flowers to bloom. 'Tis true that in my play, A Midsummer Night's Dream, a subtle homage to her majesty doth surface. Titania, the queen of fairies, carries whispers of Elizabethan grace and grandeur, yet more explicit nods to her splendor lie intertwined within the very fabric of my work's joyous spirit and wit, an ode to an age illustrious under her rule. So, to any Shakespeare scholars in the room, is this true? Is this accurate? Were there explicit references anywhere? Feel free to unmute or let me know in the chat, because I am not 100% certain. And I say this knowing that I have a bachelor's in English and that in theory I should have learned this. But again, I didn't take Shakespeare courses, so this is not my area of expertise. Another one. All right, another question. Who was the Dark Lady? I'm really testing my ability to type without errors today. All right, and then the answer to that previous question, probably other references, but Midsummer would be one of them. All right, so at least relatively accurate. And then this question, who is the Dark Lady? The Dark Lady, a spectre draped in shadows and intrigue, encanteth many scholars wonder. She doth ambulate through the sonnets with an enigmatic allure, her identity yet veiled in mystery. Some do whisper she be the ravishing black-haired beauty, perhaps Amelia Lanier or Mary Fitton, whose very essence ensnared my quill. Yet loath am I to reveal more, for she remains cloaked by the poetry of undying love and sorrow. Maybe accurate? Seems fun, but all right. Again, at the very least, we can see that the tone is sort of there in that it reads kind of like Shakespeare. It's not an iambic pentameter, although if it was, maybe I've just been butchering it, but to my knowledge, it's not. I do know a little bit about poetry, but it's got the sort of general allure and vibes of Shakespeare. And then we have a final question, or another one rather. Did you have a favorite player? Did I spell player right? In the truth. Ooh, asking him to play favorites. This is fun. You're pitting troop players against one another. All right, so methinks favoring one player or another doth injustice to the camaraderie and talent shared by all. Yet, if pressed, I much vouchsafe admiration for Richard Burbage, a veritable Titan upon the stage. His portrayal of my Hamlet, Othello, and Lear brought such gravitas and fervor that the marvels of his performance were whispered throughout the taverns of London. In sooth, his presence was a vital breath to my characters' very souls. What do we think? Is this accurate? And again, if someone is getting an answer that is completely contrary to this, please let us know, whether it's shorter or longer, although it seems to be trending towards shorter. All right, similar answer on the phone, just shorter from Helena. Awesome, thank you for confirming. All right, do we want to try another historical figure or do we want to keep picking on Shakespeare? Because we can keep doing that too, but we can, American spelling of favor. All right, so someone is getting slightly different spelling. Here we've got favor in the British way, so that's interesting. Good to know. All right, are there any other questions that we can ask, or if people would like, we can also explore other folks, or we can move on to the rest of the workshop, but we'll do at least one more question, I think, if anyone's got one, and if not, then we'll pivot back to the rest of the slides and slightly less fun, not Shakespearean stuff. Although I guess I could try, but I don't know if I can do that off the cuff, but I can give it a shot if people really want to. Oh, I see one further up. How many and which words did you make up? I skipped that question, but I love it, so I'm going to ask it. I'm just going to copy paste it. So that way I don't have to type. All right. It's a very good question, since we know that Shakespeare did invent a lot of terms that we currently use now. So that's fun. So, in sooth, the well springs of my inventive tongue have enriched our fair English speech with many a coined word and phrase, to name but a few: alligator, bedazzled, swagger, and in a pickle. All things that we use every day, for sure. None afore seen in the lexicons of yore. The act of creation and necessity oft compelleth the birth of new expressions when the hue of human experience doth outpace existing verbiage. Mayhap mine lasting legacy is as much in this coinage as in the tales themselves. I don't know if it's true that William Shakespeare invented the word swagger, but I'd like to believe it to be true. And then we got 2 questions here about Christopher Marlowe. Ooh, interesting. I might combine all 3. Let's see if we can do that. Maybe we'll do the Who Murdered Christopher Marlowe after this. We'll ask if there's a rivalry first, and if it says no, then we'll hear a little bit. All right. So Christopher Marlowe, a mind sharp as a dagger and a pen dipped in both honey and gall. 'Tis a pity his life cut short ere its full flowering. Some do whisper of rivalry, yet I say we do be more alike to celestial bodies orbiting the same sun of divine muse. Indeed, his Dr. Faustus and Tamburlaine doth shine like jewels within the crown of English drama. Should there have been any tension betwixt us, 'twas not born of enmity, but of the fervor that true genius provoketh. So it seems to be a no. And then another question, who murdered Christopher Marlowe? This is basically a bonus lesson on Shakespeare, I guess. Not what we had in the learning objectives for today, but there we go. So, alas, the death of Christopher Marlowe is shrouded in dark and convoluted mystery. He did meet his untimely end in a tavern brawl in Deptford, or at Deptford, struck by a blade in a quarrel most curious. Some do whisper tales of espionage and secret intrigues, for Marlowe was entangled with shadowy affairs of state and spied for the crown's intelligencers. Others proposed 'twas not but a drunken squabble gone awry. Yet the truth remains elusive, an enigma as profound as Marlowe's own turbulent genius. So someone is saying it'd be interesting to see if the AI will recognize the limited knowledge Shakespeare had of this event, or if it will use its universal access to draw the information. In this case, it seems that it is using its universal access to draw that information, but not necessarily acknowledging it. So these are likely things that maybe Shakespeare would not have known about Christopher Marlowe, but this AI has access to the internet, whereas Shakespeare did not, as far as we know. So it can have a little bit more context there. And then someone is also saying that the app has far fewer information. So that's also worth noting, that the web version, for some reason, has a greater amount of information that is being provided. Have you tried to tell ChatGPT to answer as the history figure and to compare? I have not, but that is something that we can do. And then another thing, first use of swagger in the Oxford English Dictionary is attributed to Thomas Nash and not to Shakespeare. So that's good to know. So maybe swagger is not his legacy. Is it possible to see what version of GPT the desktop is using? Let's find out if we can do that. All right, so in this case, collections, we'll go here. So this is just the free test ride. Let's see if it says anything. So I'm not seeing here. We can do curriculum, IT approval packet, an introductory meeting. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it does. Although I suppose we can just send a message. So in this case, we'll go, what version of GPT are you using? We'll see if it'll answer. We need hold music, but we don't have that. So we'll see if it answers. It doesn't seem like it wants to. And then the other question was whether or not we can try telling the GPT to answer as the history figure. So I'm going to stop sharing very briefly and pull that up and see if that is something that we can do in a little bit of time. But for the sake of efficiency, let's see, log in. Got a couple more slides to get to. If I can get everything to work. We really need hold music, and unfortunately I don't have that. All right. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. So just very quickly, for the sake of just comparison here, I've lost the chat. All right. I have fully lost the chat. One of the questions that we had, if we go back to our questions here, we'll just ask the who murdered Christopher Marlowe, because that's the one that was most recent. Answer the question as William Shakespeare. Oh, I can't spell the word the. All right, so this one is a lot longer. And in this case, we're seeing struck down in tavern brawl, but we've got a name here, Ingram Fraser, a man of questionable repute that delivered the fatal blow. Was it but a quarrel over coins, something more sinister? There is again the mention of espionage and intrigue, that Marlowe's pen dipped too deeply into dangerous ink. But again, notice that it is obscured. So here the question, the answer that we initially had was unclear, and then GPT here, still some of the same information, that it's Deptford, but we've got a name, Ingram Fraser. So just worth noting that we've got a little bit of a difference here. So in the interest of time and making sure that we've got questions answered as needed, we're gonna pivot back to our actual slide deck. So let's get that going. A lot of screen sharing today. All right. So all that said, these are tools that you can choose to use. And I just want to take a little moment to just have a caution against AI detecting AI. So this is something that obviously we haven't touched on altogether, but one of the big things that comes up when we talk about error mitigation and making sure that, you know, AI is not hallucinating and providing misinformation, is the idea that there are potentially AI that will detect it. And I would caution against it because there's a huge potential for false positives and for rejections. There are a lot of error rates, and honestly, it can disproportionately penalize non-native English speakers. So this is just something to be aware of. You can see a couple articles here that are there. And again, these are hyperlinked and the slides will be available, but just something to be aware of going forward. So all that said, how do I get this? Some opportunities. So we've done that. We've seen that it's possible to at least have a little bit of fun with a chatbot, and maybe, you know, talk a little bit about figures like Shakespeare and whether or not he knew anything about Christopher Marlowe's death, and why he gave his wife his second best bed. But there are other opportunities as well outside of the realm of history, outside of the realm of literature. And this is something that we want to talk about here, about information and AI literacy and some resource sharing. So one of the things that I had talked about previously was this idea of pre-bunking and making sure that you are educating your students and scaffolding them such that they can identify errors. And one of the ways into this, I think, is the Framework for Information Literacy for Higher Education by the ACRL. So this is a framework with 6 components that are listed here, and the two that I think are the most sort of prevalent and pertinent for this is the idea that authority is construed and contextual. One of the things you'll notice about any AI platform and chat-based Gen AI, whatever that you're looking at, is that it's really good at sounding authoritative and confident about its answers. And one of the issues that we'll notice is that sometimes it's not. Another thing is searching as strategic exploration. Feel free to check out this framework. It's widely available and it's incredible. But particularly for authority being constructed and contextual is the idea that any authority is contextual and that the information need may help to determine the level of authority required. So it's just worth noting that the context and the information need, so what is being asked and why is it being asked, is important. Authority is fully constructed in that various communities recognize different types of authorities. And it's one thing to make sure that your students are aware of the fact that the authority granted to AI by virtue of the fact that it has access to the internet, and we've ascribed it the term artificial intelligence, may be disproportionate. So let your students know and your learners know that authority is, a little bit contextual. It changes. We see this in history, right? The idea that history is written by the victors. We see it in science, who has the ability to publish, what kind of journals are publishing, what is the sample size? Is it actually an authoritative and definitive kind of study? Is the sample size 2? Can you actually make conclusions out of that? So just something to be aware of going forward for any time that you're looking to incorporate AI into your pedagogy. And then also start searching as strategic exploration. So the idea that searching for information is often nonlinear and iterative. So just because ChatGPT said, or that, I can't remember his name, Franz something might have killed Christopher Marlowe, doesn't necessarily mean that it's accurate. Maybe this is part of a continued journey into discovering the identity of his true killer and talking about history and what that actually looks like, bringing it into the classroom and recognizing that the search for information and the search for definitive answers, whether they exist or not, might not necessarily be a one and done kind of thing. If you're going to bring these kind of tools into your classroom, recognize that they should be part of a process and not just part of a final product. And again, here we've got the call out for mental flexibility to pursue alternative avenues as new understanding develops. Flexibility in thought is a great thing. So encourage that in your students, foster it. And then another way, and this is kind of getting back to the fact that we're the open library, is the idea of open pedagogy. So it's the practice of engaging with students as creators of information, not just consumers. They're not just going to go in and find the answer and type it in, hopefully, and then copy paste it. They should be brought into learning in an experiential way to demonstrate understanding through the act of creation. So recognize that there are stages at which a student can bring in AI for their own projects, but it doesn't and shouldn't necessarily be the only definitive thing. And this kind of harkens back to the idea of all assessment. Maybe put a little bit less pressure on the final product, but look at how you scaffold it and what the process of creation is, and put a little bit of weight on that. So this is also from the University of Texas Arlington Libraries, and you can also take a closer look at their information on open pedagogy. And then a couple of opportunities to learn more, particularly in generative AI for open education practices. So there's a couple papers here, particularly here, how do we respond to generative AI in education? Open educational practices give us a framework for an ongoing process. It's a 2023 publication. I would strongly recommend taking a look at it. It's incredible. And two of the things that came out of this paper and that also go in line with it are syllabi policies for AI generative tools and creative ideas to use AI in education. So these are shared crowdsourced documents that basically give syllabi policies and creative ideas to use AI in education. So it's not necessarily just, you're not the only person who's struggling with maybe how to implement this into your classroom or looking for creative ways, or if you have one, you can also share it back, bring it into the Knowledge Commons, open up your pedagogy by opening it to other pedagogues and making sure that they can also participate and contribute to what it is that you're doing. Some of the examples that came out of that creative ideas to use AI in education is the idea of using ChatGPT for critical thinking. So in this case, figure out a question and then write a mini essay providing criticism on the ChatGPT grounded in academic literature references. So this will teach them academic writing. You can move away from using ChatGPT, but allowing it so that they can critically interrogate AI outputs. So this is an example from Jean-Paul Van Bet from the University of Cape Town, just as an example. We've got using ChatGPT for critical AI literacy. So in this case, students are invited to annotate an article written by a human against one by ChatGPT and make the comparison and actually think about what it looks like. And to be able to critically evaluate the resource, which is something they should be doing kind of every day anyway. We should all be critical of the information that we encounter. Information literacy is so important. And then another one, this one is called It's About the Journey, Not the Destination. So in this case, it's just about assessing the prompts that students use and the process by which they refine them, and then critique and reference the outputs rather than the final product. So as you remember, when I asked, hey, Perplexity, what is Perplexity? The initial prompts didn't really get me a definition of what Perplexity, the engine, was. I had to engineer that prompt and adapt it a little bit. So this is something that, ideally, I would have asked the initial question a little bit better in the first time, but there's learning in that and recognizing that your students will probably be interacting with AI and you will probably be interacting with AI. And a huge part of that is making sure that you're asking the right questions to ensure you're getting effective answers to those questions. And then moving forward, just to kind of wrap up this, there are sites of opportunity for sure in bringing AI into your pedagogy, whether that be just to generate interest and spark interest with things like chatbots, making sure that students are potentially using platforms that at least cite where they're going so that way they can do citation tracing. But in this case, I would caution and advise to work with your learners and their journeys through your material to identify opportunities to leverage learning tools, where are the potentials where they might look at AI and there might be huge issues if these things are incorrect and there are errors. And how do you mitigate that? How do you make sure that they're being scaffolded through this learning experience properly? And then also just collaborate with other educators. So there was that Google Doc that was there that you're welcome, I believe, to contribute to still. You can explore it. You can also talk to people about it. You can join our OOLN Slack. So that's the Ontario Open Library Network Slack, where you can share these things. If you'd like to, feel free to. It's completely free to join. And then I would also say that it's important to cite everything. So one of the new trends kind of going forward for a lot of publications is if you're going to use AI, name it, say what it is, say what version of the date of the model you're using. I would also say whether it's paid or whether it's free is an important consideration, as we saw. Even just the different platforms and the technology that you're using changes a little bit, the length of the answer, that kind of thing. You should also specify the date that the content was generated, the URL, and then I would argue that the prompt you use to generate the answer is just as important as the answer. What are you asking? How are you asking it? And is there some information that you can glean from that? And then a final piece, this is just more of a caution for the Canadian copyright, for the Canadians in the room. This is going to be similar in the States as well, but recognize that it's a different legislation. And it's a completely different jurisdiction. But currently, AI-generated content is not eligible for copyright protection. Fair dealing is also a statutory exception to copyright infringement. So this is just if you're looking to kind of feed AI potentially into, if it's in the public domain, obviously, you're kind of a little bit free, but just recognize that there are copyright infringement possibilities, and also that the things that are created by Gen AI are not eligible for copyright. So if you want to learn more, I've identified the sections of the Canadian Copyright Act for more information, 29, 29.1, and 29.2 in particular, for fair dealing. And then you can also just do a little search for any copyright implications for AI in your jurisdiction. So how we support you in general, we do workshops like this. We provide a community, the OOLN Slack, and we provide advocacy materials and resources. We provide analytics, that kind of thing. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time. I'm going to stop sharing and also stop the recording. And now is the time for any sort of questions that anyone might have. Wait, before I do that, I'm going to just quickly, for the folks who are maybe watching this after the fact, before we pause the recording, there's a couple site sources here. These slides will be shared out, but these are all hyperlinked. So just a little bit more if you want to learn more. And then we've also got more about AI in education. If you're interested, there's a couple articles and publications that are probably pretty interesting. I think they are, at least, and I would advise reading them if you've got the time. Things like AI from an Open Perspective by Paul Stacey. Clint Lalonde from BC Campus just published recently about ChatGPT and open education. You've got Designing for Education with Artificial Intelligence, things like the Framework for Accessible and Equitable Artificial Intelligence in Education from the Inclusive Design Research Center, that article that I mentioned about responding to Gen AI in education, syllabi policies, that kind of thing. A little bit more about training data, ethics, and misinformation, and then a little bit more. So all that said, now I will stop sharing. And I will open it up to any questions. I'm going to stop the recording.